We are live.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It is Monday, November 4th. This is a special meeting of the Darien Board of Education's Curriculum Committee. We are all virtual today, which is a little bit different, but we unfortunately do not have the room because of Election Day tomorrow. So bear with us. It might be a little more tricky, but we are hopeful that this will go well. Our next meeting is December 4th, and that will be in person in the Board of Education meeting room. Our agenda today includes the K-3 literacy update and then new course proposals after that. I will say that we are very excited to have members of our teaching staff today to talk about K-3 literacy, as well as some administrators. So I will turn it over to Amy today to introduce everybody. And thank you to those of you that are taking time out of your day to be here. We very much appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Parent. I think we'll start with, again, saying that we do have just those two agenda items. We're very pleased today to talk with you about our K-3 literacy into reading pilot and to have staff from our schools who will be able to share their firsthand experience in implementing the pilot. I also want to start by saying, obviously, this is a very charged discussion, not only in Darien, but throughout the state of Connecticut and beyond. And I'm very grateful for our teachers' willingness to share firsthand their experience today. We're very proud of the curious nature that we've approached looking at literacy based on the state feedback and gaps that we found in our programming through our own analysis. These teachers and others that are in the steering committee, that group includes 60 teachers, and the core review team have really spent a great deal of time researching not only this program, but best practices in literacy instruction and how we can best support our students in their quest as growing readers. So today we'll be hearing a little bit about our update from our most recent meeting with the State Department of Education that was held last week. Again, we'll hear from our teachers about their experiences thinking about all frames of literacy, all areas of literacy skill, and then we will talk to you about our next steps. We've also conducted an initial survey to get feedback beyond the group of teachers that you'll hear from today for teachers throughout the district in the grade levels that are piloting. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Ms. Stroller.
Thank you. How are we at the
Just keep talking. Okay. Just keep talking. It'll be fine.
Sure. Okay. Good morning, everybody. So I'm just going to provide a quick update on our meeting with the state, and of course, we know that you're anxious to hear from our teachers and talk a little bit about next steps. So on October 24th, Dr. Adley, Dr. Fedigan, and I met with the state, and we talked about what we're hearing, pros and cons, and that we are still very new in our implementation. We wanted to just share with them the work that's been done. We decided that we were going to reconvene in a month to check in on the pilot, the progress of the pilot, and also share samples of writing, because that was an area that we had a lot of feedback on. We asked at the board's request, what happens if the district does decide not to use one of the state-approved program, and they suggested that we seek legal counsel to understand the ramifications. We scheduled a follow-up meeting to discuss the results once they're available. We also talked about what measures are we using to assess the effectiveness besides just student data, which we know is going to be probably inconclusive at this point. So we did create a survey that we sent out to all of our teachers, our 24 teachers who are participating in the pilot. Every single one of them provided feedback. And as Dr. Fedigan said, we are going to send out a similar survey to our teachers who are not in the pilot and then reconvene our core review team. So one of the things that I want to share with you, these are the teachers that are representing their schools that will be speaking today. So let's just take a quick look at the survey, which again represents all 24 voices. And we will we'll share this. We just got survey results even this weekend coming in. So given the timing of elementary parent-teacher conferences, we wanted to make sure that teachers had enough time to complete this. Is it possible to scroll down? Okay. So we used a Likert scale and we aligned this with the values.
You must be the architect, someone in charge, I think. Are you the owner? Are you? Cool.
Yeah,
It's linked in this.
It's been,
Yeah.
right. Okay, let's just see. Excuse us for 1 minute. You may need to open it another way.
Do you want to maybe come back to that and hear from the
Yes.
teachers? Okay. So our teachers, first of all, the teachers were so grateful for this opportunity to speak directly to the board. Because this is such a highly charged issue and there is not 100% agreement. It is a challenging conversation. But you know, as we said, we want to hear every viewpoint and have these difficult conversations because this is really important. So representing our each school and team, we have Bess McNamee, first grade at Royal, Arlie Carr Harris, first grade at Tokenique, Sharon Shea, second grade at Hinley, Stacy Johnson, second grade at Ox Ridge, Allison Weissert, third grade at Holmes. There was a typo in the presentation that was in the packet. Linda Dragata, third grade at Royal, and Nicole Pentor is the Hinley literacy specialist. She's not going to speak this morning, but is available to answer any questions so that we have a representative from each school. So we thought we would just start with our first grade teachers and have them share their feedback. So Bess, I can't see you, but.
Oh, can you see me now? Or can you hear me?
Yes, we can see you and hear you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Yes, I'm Bess McNamee. I teach at Royal. I teach first grade. I do want to thank the board very much for extending this invitation to us. I do appreciate having my voice heard by you. So thank you for taking the time this morning for us. So, you know, we're on day, I don't even know how many days we've been in school now, but, you know, we've been doing this for a few months. We're finishing now. Into Reading has modules. And so we're finishing the second one, getting ready to go into the third one. You know, I've been here for a really long time, those of you that know me, and I've seen programs come and I've seen programs go. And there's no perfect program. If there was a perfect program, we would definitely have it here in Darien, but there's not a perfect program. But what you do have here is you have amazing teachers who look at the kids in front of them and they give those kids exactly what they need. And it may not be part of that program. It might be a different resource. We might be pulling from other things. But InterReading has a lot of resources for us to use. In fact, this morning I wanted to print just so I had it in front of me and I could even somehow share it with everybody. But there are family letters that go with each module home. And when I was looking for it today to have in front of me, this family letter is available in every language you could possibly imagine. It's available in Portuguese, it's available in Spanish, it's available in Mandarin, like any French, it's all there. So I think the family component of this is also really strong. These letters will talk a little bit about what we're doing in the current unit. And then it gives some ideas for some fun things to do at home to reinforce what they're learning in the unit. One of the things I really like about the wordplay is that it's not what we're currently teach them in the structured literacy, but it's what we have already taught. So then it's more solidified to the kids versus sending them, this is what we're working on in this week, and the kids maybe don't really have it solid yet. So I really appreciate about these letters. Each module also has lots of different anchor charts that we can print, you know, at the print shop and have these available for the students learning. And sometimes something is introduced, like this was introduced at one short little blip a few weeks ago, but it circles back. You know, we'll come back to it. And so we may not necessarily have these charts hanging up all the time. They might be things that kind of rotate in and out, depending on how we're using them. another really great thing about this program is it explicitly teaches vocabulary, which I know is something that the state had really wanted. So the vocabulary on here is really rich. It's introduced prior to the reading of each story, and then it's reinforced throughout the entire day, depending on the activity, because every lesson, like day one, it's all connected with your reading, your structured literacy, your vocabulary, your grammar, your writing, it's all connected. And we find at Royal that the students are using this vocabulary like on the playground. They'll come up to us and say, oh, such and such just said that was ridiculous. That was one of the words that we had last week, ridiculous. And also seeing it in their writing a little bit too, like they're trying hard to incorporate that in their writing if they can. The essential questions of each unit is tied to social emotional learning and social studies and science. So what we're doing now is family and community, and in social studies, our first unit was about community. So there's a lot of tie-in there to actually make that really stronger in that social studies capacity as well. And there are both fiction and nonfiction books that kids are exposed to. Another piece that parents brought up to me at conferences was the structured literacy piece, because in this piece, like we've already taught kids in first grade what an open and closed syllable is. And I had a few parents ask me what that meant, because they're like, my child's saying something about a syllable, and what's it mean that it's open? What's it mean that it's closed? So they are talking about the rules and things that they are learning. And it is, it's consistent, explicit instruction. The writing piece, and you probably will hear this from others, is very different. And we did have to tell parents that as well. In the past, you may have seen 10 pieces of writing come home. But what this program does is it really teaches the writing process, and it helps kids develop their ideas and encourages them to reflect on their work and make improvements at each step. So at the end, they have one really great piece of writing. There's a lot of grammar. Again, parents had commented at conferences that their kids were coming home and saying, that's a noun, that's a verb, because we have taught them already nouns, common nouns, proper nouns, verbs, and adjectives. So they are including that at home as well. And they really are starting to understand those concepts and applying those to their writing. I am going to say it's a lot. There's a lot to this program. I mean, I know you can't see it, but there's a stack here of the teacher manuals. So because like I said before, day one is everything. Your reading, your writing, your grammar, it's all there. And if you have an enrichment program and that's during your reading block, now then the next day, you're going to be on day one of reading still, but you're going to be on day two of your structured literacy and your writing because of your timing of your day. So there is a lot of, where am I? I have to do this. And it is a lot of planning. I mean, I spend 2+ hours a weekend working and planning out these lessons. And I know it's new and, I'm getting used to it, but there are a lot of components to it. So it's a lot of back and forth. The lessons are really long, which I know I've heard teachers say that they feel like the lessons are so long that it takes away from then the independent practice that the children might have. And I think that that's something that we are going to be bringing up tomorrow when we have our professional learning with a representative into reading, to see if there are any suggestions that she may have to help us kind of navigate that process. I think that's all I have to say. I don't know, do you want me to take questions now, Julie, or do you want Arlie to go?
Probably, why don't we have everybody talk and then we can take questions.
Thank you again, board. Thank you.
Thanks, Beth.
Hello, I'm Arlie Carr-Harris. I teach first grade at Tokenique. And I would like to also just say thank you so much. We so appreciate the board being willing to hear from us. Our firsthand experience is invaluable, and so we appreciate you listening to us. I would echo a tremendous amount of what Bess has just said about the program. I think one of the things that our team is seeing that we really like a lot is that the program spirals. So as Beth mentioned, we teach a topic and then we spiral back to it. And we're only in our second module, but I would say that I do see a lot of transfer happening from every content area to the next. It does connect to writing. I would also agree with Bess that we're not seeing the same volume that we're accustomed to with our writers, but it is slow and methodical, which I do think is helpful for first grade writers. They do need time to think and plan. I think the vocabulary piece is outstanding. We see a lot of transfer in the spoken word that our children are using. Some teachers at our school are seeing them transfer the vocabulary into their writing, which is great. And that goes with the grammar as well. I know that that's something we talked about with the state, is that, we needed a more significant grammar piece. And I do think that we are seeing the children use the words that they're learning about in the grammar. They're using them in their day. They're talking about them at home. And the only other thing that I would say that we are sort of seeing more is we tried really hard to do the program with fidelity. And if we do that, we would have to make some pretty significant adjustments, especially to the amount of time that children are reading independently. That is one of the biggest struggles that we're having here. And as an educator, I think it's important for us to be able to have time to read with our students, because then we can sort of figure out where their strengths are and where their areas of work are. And then we can teach into those and differentiate more. So I think to Bess's point, we're going to have to find out some information about ways to adjust the lessons so that we can maximize that time. Overall, I think we're enjoying it, but I also think that we feel very strongly that we need much more time to learn more about the program, to have professional development about the program. There are a tremendous amount of resources, which we love, but it will take a significant amount of time for us to understand those resources and how to use them best throughout our day. And we are feeling like we really need to finish the year out in order to give true feedback about what this program has been like and how we're seeing it impact our students. And I think that's it for me. Yeah, you're welcome. Mm-hmm.
Hey, Sharon?
Hi, my name is Sharon Shea, and I'm a second grade teacher at Holmes Elementary School. Yes, thank you for this opportunity to share our thinking with you on this pilot. So when I think about best practices in literacy, one thing that comes to mind for me and my colleagues is the strong connection that we have with our students and how we're learning together. And knowing the strengths of our students when they come into us each year is so important, because every child that we have that enters our classroom is capable of learning if we take them from where they are. Our struggle so far with what we've seen with this program is the one-size-fits-all approach is a struggle for us, because it seems very scripted and we feel like there's a lot of teacher talk, which then does not lend itself for our children to be doing their deep thinking as well. There's no argument that this program has tons of components, so many that I'm sure all of us as educators have not even figured out putting them all into place. What concerns my colleagues and I is that when you have so many components that need to be executed in this way, we lose that time for our students in our intense small groups that are so purposeful for their individual needs. So again, we worry about that independent reading time as well. We know all our kids come into us at different levels, have different needs, and we know the importance of those small groups really targeting that instruction. This program has the components. It has vocabulary, it has the phonics, it has reading strategies. It has all of these components. However, when we look at some of these components like the phonics and we think about how well prepared our Darien students are each year and in each grade level, it was concerning to us how repetitive the phonics was and sort of not pushing our learners where they need to go in the phonics. It was very repetitive. It was skills that they had already seemed to have mastered in first grade. So we felt like that push is not strong enough for our students. Sure, we always have students who are going to fall a little behind or below, and that's where our intensive small groups can help with that instruction. Although reading strategies are presented, we found that they're presented very fast, and we worry about the time to really practice and do well with those strategies and really connect it to their reading. There's an abundance of vocabulary, so many words each day that my colleagues and I question, are they really holding on to these vocabulary words and really using them in their daily work that they're doing? The writing for us has started very slowly. We've had lots of discussions of where we were writing last year and feel like there was so much more writing occurring. The kids were writing about things they know, and the kids were producing so much more writing than they are this year. So that's a concern for us as well. Again, if we take a program like this and we start tailoring it and shifting it and bringing in other research, other resources, I question what's the point then investing in this. So when we reflect on our teaching and what we've done in the past, we think about those strong mini lessons that we've presented in the areas of phonics and reading and writing, and then the ability for children to work independently and a teacher to work in those small groups. And we're not finding that this program allows for all of those components that way, because there is so much that has to be presented in the course of a day. And I think the biggest thing for us is that when we as teachers are doing most of the talking, how does that help our children to continue to be those intense thinkers?
Thanks, Sharon. Stacy, do you want to jump in now?
Can you hear me? Yes, I would love to jump in. I was busy taking notes because our team is, and first of all, thank you very much for letting us share our feedback. I'm very much the second grade team, Stacy Johnson at Oxridge, and our second grade team is very much in agreement with Bess and Arlie. We absolutely love the variety of the components and just the resources. I tend to disagree with Sharon about the components of the vocabulary. For one, I don't think it's imperative that the kids, there's a tremendous amount of vocabulary that is introduced that go along with the texts that we are reading together. So I think it's more about the exposure and the kids having exposure to these words. And then once we've talked about them, they are very much on the lookout for the words, and they get excited when they pop up in the text. And we do find that they get excited when I am reading different books to them, or, they come up throughout the day. The kids are recognizing these vocabulary words. So I do think, I don't think anyone, learns vocabulary and puts it to use at their first exposure. I think it's about repeated exposure. One thing that hasn't come up is the read alouds and the shared reading. The texts are so engaging for the kids. We're reading read aloud or shared reading, a different one almost every day, and the kids absolutely love it. I do want to, and there's also a variety of genres of text, so we're exposing kids to a lot of different genres: poetry, drama, informational texts, fiction, very, very engaging for the kids. I do want to talk to the writing piece, which is very different, as Sharon has said. But because the kids aren't writing the same quantity that they wrote in the past, but I think it's more about the quality. There is much more emphasis on teaching explicit strategies, on teaching the kids about the writing process, that it's not just about writing story after story, but writing well and expressing yourself clearly, and planning out your thoughts and your writing. So there are a lot of organizers involved, and there's a lot of talking about the steps. Grammar is great, that we are teaching grammar, which hasn't been done before, that there are tie-ins to social studies and science. But I do love the explicit teaching of strategies. And what else did I want to add? Yes, parents have also commented during conference time, that the kids we have just completed the first 2 modules. The second module, the kids did a type of writing that we had never taught before. They wrote descriptive essays, and parents were giving us feedback at conferences that their kids were so excited about it that they were talking about it at home. The parents were aware of what they were writing because the kids were sharing. So that was really, really nice to hear. And what else did I want to say? Just that the read alouds are great. It was very overwhelming at first, I won't lie. The components, the number of components, it is, I think as Bess was saying, it's hard to stay on track with all the components every day because it does move fairly quickly. And the spiraling piece was difficult, but now I really appreciate it that we touch upon something and then we have come back to the same topic using different, with a variety of texts. So it reinforces it with the kids. We are not finding it quite so difficult for the kids to have enough independent reading time. As we were told at PD that we're the teachers, this is a program, and to use what we think is best in the lessons. So we're very much enjoying it. It's still definitely a learning process, but we're happy with what we've seen so far.
Stacy. Allison, you want to jump in?
Sure. Good morning. My name is Allison Weissert. I'm a 3rd grade teacher at Holmes Elementary School. And I also want to thank the board for taking the time to listen to how the pilot is going in our classrooms. As with all programs, there are those positive components and some components that are not as positive. To start with, a positive component that many of the other teachers have mentioned is the variety of grammar instruction. We are teaching grammar. It is embedded into our writing modules, mainly during the revising and editing steps of the writing process. But there are also a variety of resources that we can pull from as well when teaching grammar. My team and I have noticed that students are doing well when it comes to the independent grammar activities that we put in during those lessons. However, we're curious to see how that transfer into their independent writing is going to look in the next couple weeks and months of doing the pilot. Another positive is the vocabulary instruction that other teachers have mentioned. However, what we're noticing in 3rd grade is the words not being as challenging as they should for the level of readers that we have in our classroom. To give you a specific example, our last couple of words we taught were video, march, block. 3rd graders know what those words mean and are able to use them in their spoken and written language. We didn't necessarily need to teach into them, but within the pilot, we were told to. And the last positive component is the variety of genres that students are being exposed to. However, that leads me into some of the challenges. So all of the read alouds are interactive, but we are reading to the students in front of us. There is a big lack of independent reading time, and that is really impacting our students. My team and I have noticed just the stamina of 3rd grade readers isn't typically where we have seen it in the past, mainly because they are not given those consistent opportunities to practice their stamina and build it and read independently. Many of our reading lessons last anywhere between 30 to 50 minutes in an hour literacy block, which depending on the day, sometimes only gives students 10 minutes to read independently. So not only is their stamina being impacted, but we're really unable to see if the transfer of those comprehension skills that we're teaching are happening in their independent reading. Yes, we could see it throughout our discussions with our class read alouds, but it's very difficult to see if students are transferring those skills to their independent reading because of the lack of reading time, but then the lack of time for teachers to differentiate and pull small groups. Yes, there are a variety of resources that Interreading has for differentiation, But if students aren't able to work independently, teachers are not able to differentiate to meet the needs of our learners, which we're noticing is a huge challenge. Along with that, the explicit spelling instruction in third grade is definitely lacking. We're teaching a specific vowel sound. However, there are many ways that you can spell that vowel sound, vowel consonant E, vowel teams, etc. And we're not explicitly teaching students strategies to use when spelling. We're giving students a list of 15 to maybe 20 words, giving them opportunities to practice and then expecting them to spell those words correctly. Without that explicit instruction, students are able to generalize. They're learning how to spell certain words correctly, but they can't generalize those skills and strategies to spell other words that follow that same pattern correctly. And then lastly, just with our writing modules, yes, the grammar is definitely a huge positive, and the fact that it's embedded in the modules is great. However, the lessons around planning, development in third grade, my team and I have noticed are very broad. We're supposed to remind students how to use dialogue in our personal narrative module without explicitly teaching them the purpose or how to do so. My team and I was noticing that we really needed to supplement a lot during that module in order to give the best instruction in that genre because it was very broad and not as explicit. So of course, like I said in the beginning, there are positive and negatives, but we are finding that the challenges around the independence and time for differentiation is something to really think about.
Thank you, Allison. And finally, Linda, do you want to share? Linda Dragata, third grade at Royal.
I would love to. I definitely want to thank the board. This is a really great opportunity that you've given us to chat about what we're seeing, what we're experiencing. I also want to thank the teachers that I've been working with. This truly is a collaborative effort, and I'm really grateful that I've been able to experience this with my team and not necessarily just by myself piloting it. In addition, having first grade as well to bounce things off of, and Allison at Holmes, and everyone that I've talked to has really, I feel like, helped me in a way as a teacher and my team. So I definitely want to thank the teachers, and in addition to our administration with Natasha, Amanda, Katie, you guys have always been there to support us and help us in any way. And again, that's something that we are very appreciative of, and we consider ourselves lucky. So I just wanted to start off with that. Overall, I agree with a lot of things everyone's saying. Overall, there are so many resources that are available for comprehension, fluency, grammar. I do think there's a lot of writing resources. However, I do agree that the lessons itself are quick. There's more modules, right, that we have to go through. However, there are resources that can help that I have found, but the narrative writing unit, it was hard to do character development more with the kids. However, the letter writing unit we just finished, they absolutely loved. And just to see these different units that we're introducing to them to, and the fact that they're so excited, and I'm so excited giving it to them, it's actually a lot of fun. So I'm not going to be redundant because I feel like we've definitely mirrored saying how I think important the vocabulary component is in third grade. We are introducing these words to really make sure the kids understand the story that we're reading, right? I think that I'm also seeing with the vocabulary, when students are independently reading and they see the vocabulary, they'll come up to me and be like, oh my gosh, that's a word. And I think that's pretty cool to see. Also, when they're speaking, I'm seeing more of that vocabulary as well. I do want to mention that the assessment component is something we haven't talked about. And there are a variety of different assessments that you can give these kids for reading comp. There could be weekly assessments. There could be end of module assessments. It could be on paper. It could be assigned on the Chromebooks. So there's a lot of different ways to assess these kiddos in that way. Also, third grade is in a little bit of a different spot, right? Because third graders taking the SBAC for the first time. And I've got to be honest, like doing those two-part questions, finding evidence to support your thoughts is, I think, challenging for students. And this program is giving you that opportunity very early on. Like we have the two-part questions that they need to answer. And is it necessarily on an assessment? Maybe, but it's also in those interactive read alouds because there's Post-its throughout during these interactive read alouds as a teacher that you give to them. And I understand 100% these interactive read alouds could take a while. However, we could pick and choose what we're going to say too, and we don't have to go through all of them. So we as a team are really thinking about, okay, what's working best for the students? If I'm sitting there for 35 minutes and I look at my class and they are not available to learn anymore, I got to cut it. I got to cut it off, right? So we have had times with the independent reading. We've seen that too. We average now probably 15 to maybe 20 minutes a day for their independent reading. In the beginning, it was hardly anything. So now it's getting better. I've had students come up to me and say, you know what, I've been sitting on the carpet for a really long time and it's hard for me. So I made an agreement with my class. We're gonna cut it off as much as we can after 15 minutes and then we'll move on. Does that make the pacing a little bit slower? It does, but you know, we're also working together as a classroom community to try to figure this out. And the pilot pack also didn't contain certain things that we would expect to have if we purchase the program, like the Rigby Library, which does help with small group instruction. The vocabulary cards are something that we have to order from the copy center. So there's some components that we don't have for the pilot. However, we've been able to work around that. With the grammar, I totally agree. It's embedded into the writing. What I do love about this program too is the lessons that we're teaching. Maybe the kids don't know what a subject and a predicate is, right? But we can go back to the second grade lessons and we can take from there. So that's also something different that we haven't necessarily had at our fingertips. And we can even go to fourth grade if we need to, if we think kids need to be challenged. When I reflect, I really think about the time. That's what is the big, I guess, push for my team and I is to figure out how can we fit in everything that we think is important. Spelling, last thing, and then I'll stop talking because I know I've been talking for a while. So in regards to spelling, I totally agree that it's not foundations where we're doing it every day, right? In third grade, you're sort of introducing the spelling pattern one day, then you do the sort, but again, you're not looking at those words every day. However, K through 2 has a structured literacy component where our kids haven't experienced that yet. So I think the expectation is when they get to third grade, they're going to have a lot of solid foundations in place. I'm not a representative for HMH, so I can't say if that's why the spelling component isn't as rich as we're looking for them to be. Oh, last thing, and then I promise I'm done. Decodables. You can even, if you want to work with students on fluency, if you want to do small group work on a specific skill, there's tons of decodables that you can print out, you can assign to the kids, and you can do it together. So this platform is huge. And what I do like too is the fact that it's similar to the way Math in Focus looks. So as a new teacher to that, it was easy for me to sort of navigate because I've been on the Math in Focus platform so much. So I think I finished everything I wanted. Oh, well, there's literacy centers too. You can have independent projects if you want to challenge the students more. I think, oh, there's Teacher's Corner where you can watch videos and you can learn about more activities to support the teachers. There's like a center, there's centers you can do, but again, I get it. It's like, you only have so much time in the day, and our day isn't just dedicated to literacy. So lots of facets to the program that we have to pick and choose what we want and finding the time to get everything done that we want. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Linda.
Wow, so clearly, our staff has spent a lot of time being not only practitioners of literacy instruction, but also researchers. So the volume of discussion that we've had around, again, best practices for teaching, reading and writing, listening and speaking, and putting all of those skills together has been very valuable. This is obviously a very big lift. So I want to say that our staff had the resources, many of them in the summer. They have spent countless hours being students, like a graduate course for them, I'm sure. Countless hours being students of the resources involved in this program. And several of our teachers have said, well, it's really around the teacher making those sound instructional decisions. And we've said all along, regardless of the program, and we want a very strong core program, ultimately, it is always the teacher who knows the child, the reader, the writer before them, that we trust to make the decisions instructionally to match the child with the resource, the instructional strategy, the assessment, and the next level of rigor and challenge for that student. So that's something that can't be quantified in any program, but we see happen daily in our classrooms. And I know it was really important for the board. We've been talking together as a staff about this since prior to I arrived with the waiver, and certainly as we engaged as a steering committee and core review team. But it was very important for you all to hear our staff today, and I want to encourage this conversation to continue. It's a very healthy conversation to have. It's one of the things that the state said to us that, you know, the volume of, again, discussion around best practices in teaching literacy is something that had we not engaged in this pilot, might not have been as rigorous for us as a staff as it has been. So thank you to our staff for sharing all of that. And I'm sure, Sarah, the board may have questions now. If you'd like, we can do that before we do the survey and circle back to further questions after the survey, if you'd like.
Sure. I don't want to take more time away from the teachers. I just want to say thank you. This was amazing. Like it is very clear to me that our children have excellent human beings standing in front of them and working with them. So thank you. You were all very, it's very clear that you've done a ton of work, and I very much appreciate you being willing to share your thoughts with us. I guess I'll just start off with my question. My biggest concern about all this is the level of autonomy that teachers have using a one-size-fits-all program. And many of you have said that the one-size-fits-all does not work. And I'm wondering, you know, you're doing this pilot, and some of you have said with fidelity, which I appreciate because that's how you learn if the program is great or not. But if you could project forward, you know, if we choose to do this, do you see that there is enough space for you to have that autonomy, to be able to differentiate, to be able to reach those individual children in front of you?
Is it okay if I jump in?
Please.
I would say yes, but we would have to, from our perspective at Tokenique, we would have to make some significant adjustments because we really expect I know they're first graders and they're small, but our expectation is that they're reading for 20 minutes independently, not right now at the beginning of the year, but as the year progresses on. And so in order for that to happen, they have to build stamina in the beginning of the year. And so we would have to adjust, I think, how the lessons are taught, when certain things are taught. I was speaking to my colleagues the other day, and because the interactive read aloud came up, right, a lot, and how it's extensive and it takes time and there's a lot of questioning and it's very teacher directed. That is a lesson some days. And instead of that being a lesson, it would have to be shifted to a different part of the day to allow for independent reading on that particular day. So I think we could do it because we're good at what we do, but I think it would take some time and a lot of thought, purposeful thought.
I definitely agree with that. And I do think that we need time together. Like we'll have some time tomorrow to be able to say, well, this is what I'm doing. Because I will admit I'm going rogue a little bit because I'm looking at what the kids need in front of me. And there are times when, so one of the lessons, they have a reader that everybody has the same book, right? Think about it old school, like a Basil reader sort of, right? Everybody has the same book. So they bring that book with them to the carpet as I'm doing the lesson. But what I can do is incorporate some things I've learned from units of study, whereas I can say, with the partner next to you, and I can ask one of the questions that we have abundantly, with the partner next to you, think about this question, right? So again, not so much myself, but putting some more on them. But again, I think number one, teachers have to give themselves permission to do that, and like, that's okay. And then adjusting some of your things, like Linda said earlier, like realizing like they need to read, that they absolutely have to read right now. And then maybe cutting your lesson a little short and having to go over another time. Again, it's our first go round, and I think there's just a big learning curve right now too.
And so I have a difference of opinion on that. I disagree a little bit with, if we are going to purchase a program like this and we are going to do it the way it's intended, my fear is if we start dropping pieces of it to fit in that small group time the way it's intended, why are we purchasing a program like this? So in my years of experience, and I've used programs before, what starts to happen is teachers start dropping pieces of the program to put in what we know as best practices for children, and then you start to lose what that intent of that program was. So I fear that because we all know as educators the importance of differentiated instruction and small group work. And this program, with all the components it has, does not lend itself for the time frame to do that if you are using all the components.
Can I just jump in?
Please.
I will say that during our PD, one of the things the presenter taught us was that there are so very many questions provided to the teacher, especially during the shared reading texts, on the side of the teacher manuals. There's just question after question. She did stress that you certainly don't have to ask every single question. You would never get, that clearly would take your entire lesson. But as a teacher, use your judgment. Again, think about your students, what they know, where you want to stretch them, what you want to focus on, and sort of pick and choose what you want, how you want the discussion to go, and to have them turn and talk and have them, talk with their partner. We also, to have the kids be able to read more, those shared reading lessons, it is a lot of the teacher talk, we're reading it aloud, we're asking the questions, but then the next day I have the kids' partner read it. Or when we did a play, I put them in small groups and they were reading it. So again, I think there is that component, even before their independent reading time, that they're still getting reading. But I think a good place, an easy place to sort of focus your lesson is not to ask all of those questions. There are a tremendous amount of questions in the shared reading.
And I know she also mentioned that even the vocabulary, I've been doing that maybe during morning meeting and not necessarily doing it in the reading block, because it does take a bit of time talking about, if there's 8 vocabulary words and you want to make sure they understand and they give you a sentence, yeah, that takes a little bit, but you can do that during morning meeting as well.
Thank you. So I think it's really clear that there's a huge range of thought from everybody here, and I very much appreciate the difference of opinion. I think that's very helpful to everybody. So thank you to everybody for being honest about how they're feeling about this. I saw Katie had a question.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you guys so much. There's nothing I love more than hearing from teachers talk about curriculum. I could make this go all day, and I so appreciate your time. And I also just wanted to say that I really appreciate the wealth of experience that we have in this room. I am not an educator, but I have 3 kids who, have gone through these programs with some of the teachers in the room. I have subbed in Darien, and I've seen this, and I really just appreciate how thoughtful you all are being. And I've taken pages of notes, and I know you guys have only scratched the surface of what you've been going through. I actually feel like what I'm hearing is not really so complicated or so diverse. What I'm really hearing is that this is coming to scheduling, is that I'm hearing that teachers have resources, that they have structure, and that what we really need to do is that we have work to do on how we are going to implement it, and to make sure that our teachers have enough time to get in what they need to do, that they have enough time to learn and plan and feel comfortable with their side. It sounds to me like there's definitely some professional development and some, which makes sense, right? It's really only been a couple of months with something brand new, and it's not even happening across every classroom at every school yet, right? You guys really are piloting this in new waters, and I so appreciate that. And I hope that I'd love to see some more of the detailed feedback too about, some of the things that you guys are saying. I am curious about maybe putting together a few kind of like quick fact sheets and metrics. One thing that has come up is the time of independent reading. I'm curious how much time was spent in your classrooms last year in independent reading. How much is optimal? What's our goal? I think Mrs. Johnson, you just said 20 minutes. Those things are really helpful for us to hear. What's the range? I think that someone said that you might have a lesson that's 30 minutes, it might be 50, right? So what's our average that we're looking at for that? I appreciated, the level of detail. Mrs. Dragrata, you were talking about some of the centers and the decodables. I'd love to hear more about the texts. What's different in the text? Are we still using leveled readers? How do we kind of know the jump for individual kids and differentiation on their level of decodables? Same thing in writing. Hearing about the volume of writing being a major difference. And I'm sorry, I'd have to check my notes. I don't remember who said it, but I very much appreciated the comment on quality over quantity. And I think that, my oldest is a junior, and I think that the focus was for a long time a lot about like these great contents and ideas, which is a wonderful thing. Our kids are smart and bright and creative, and our teachers nurture that. But, when we get to be talking about the practical application of this, and when they're in high school, when they're in college and beyond, communication comes down to how efficient and how effective you can be. People need to be able to understand you in your writing. So I think that would be another really interesting point to kind of have some understanding. I'm thrilled to hear about the spelling and the grammar and the acknowledgement that was lacking. So there's a few things that I think could be great follow-ups that, maybe we can put together in kind of a quick fact sheet to kind of compare side by side for those of us, that are not in the classrooms and are trying to understand what you guys are going through. One other thing that I'd love to understand a little bit more about as well, with Mrs. Dragrata, you mentioned this too, is kind of that difference of K-2 versus third grade. I know that we're not piloting kindergarten, but that the early literacy is definitely focused on that. And we talk, sometimes about kind of that break in learning to read versus reading to learn. So I would be interested in how we see, this program kind of fitting into those different kind of, how we break that down for the age group and what their main focuses are.
Thanks, Katie. I think there's definitely are some follow-up. I mean, I would love to continue this conversation next month if possible. We'll talk with Amy about it, but I definitely think there's some follow-up pieces, but writing in particular, that I would love to understand more. Greg.
First, just thanks everyone for all your time and insights. It's truly valuable. I had kind of a two-part, but kind of bigger picture question, just in terms of thinking about the program. One is just related to, as you were talking through it, like it was hard for me at least to differentiate between just focusing on like what are the benefits, pluses and minuses of this program in and of itself versus like what do we have in place today and what is incremental to what we have in place today. So I think understanding that a little bit better would be helpful. And that's just in the context of, it's a program that's, the cost of the program is upwards of $650,000. That's not a little bit of money. And so the other thing that I was going to ask the teachers is, for this program, if there were no state, so-called state mandate, would you be supportive of spending that money on this program if there was no requirement by the state? And just getting that perspective, I think, would also be really helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. I appreciate that. And I would echo that. I mean, if is this the best program to use for our students, or are we saying this is the best program that we're being told we have to use? So I think there is a difference there for sure.
And I think just to jump on that just a little bit, I think we can't answer that question now because it's still so new. I think we need more time And we need more work with this in order to answer that question. I think it's a great question, and we too have that same question, but we need more time.
I agree. I also think that, to your point of, what would we have done if the state hadn't come? I think we all recognized that we were lacking in the vocabulary and grammar areas, in particular in writing. And so we have been saying for a while, this is something we need to take a look at and make better. So I'm glad that we're doing that right now, regardless of the program, right? Both Into Reading is happening as a pilot, but then we're also piloting things for the teachers who are not doing Into Reading. Word Love is happening. And so I think it's important for us to take a look at, I agree with you at that, and say, like, is that fulfilling the need that we were having in those areas? But I also echo Bess. I think we really need more time to really take a look at this before we could make any decisions.
Understood. I think the board understands that piece as well. So thank you.
I also wanted to add, we've had a lot of discussion about our small groups and differentiating. And what's also very important in looking at, especially a program that's one size fits all, is we have children who are also coming into our classrooms that are excelled in reading and higher. And how are we accommodating for them as well? So I think that has to come into play when we start to think about a one size fits all.
So to that, just a quick follow-up there, Sarah. So as you all are thinking through it, and definitely appreciate, there's no answer yet. You guys are still going through this program. I think it'd be really helpful as you go through it to think about, I think for us as a board, we're deciding, are we diving full head into this program? Is there a way to pick pieces of the program? Like maybe it's not a binary thing where it's like a yes or no. Maybe there's components of the program which we really like. I think getting that kind of feedback from you all as well, because we also recognize that there were some shortfalls of what the existing program we had in place. And so if there's components where like, we really just need this, maybe there's a less expensive version that we can all get behind.
Thanks. And I think that, time is what we need to discover that.
So the only thing I would say there, Mr. Gramley, just to, and to our staff, thank you this morning for being here. We have not, I think if you would understand, we have not put any sort of financial, other than what has been discussed at the board level, sort of consideration for our staff to make a judgment call on. In fact, to be honest with you, I'd prefer they wouldn't, based on the finances. I'd rather go through this with fidelity and decide programmatically what's best for kids, and it's up to administrative recommendation and the board decision as to whether we do that. It's just not a consideration. Just being honest, it's not a consideration we ask our staff to look at, and I'd prefer them to make the recommendation based on instructional teaching and learning issues.
Thanks. In the interest of time, I don't know, Julie and Amy, do you want to go over that survey just as it's almost 9 o'clock and I don't want to take the teacher's time any more than we need to?
I'm sorry, Sarah, I'm sorry to jump in. There is just one thing that we haven't touched on that I was hoping just quickly. We haven't spoken at all about sort of the support services for students. And I was just hoping to hear, quickly, or if it could come in a follow-up about your classroom makeup. I'm hoping that there are ranges of students, so you have that above, that below, and that middle. And I'm curious to hear about how students, who might be getting pull out and push in, and how they're feeling, and being included in that general ed classroom.
I wonder if that's something that we could talk about in December, just so now that we have that question on the table, the teachers can go back and take that into consideration. I think that's a great idea.
Thank you.
Do you want to move into the survey piece?
And we'll just, this is a graphic, so it's really easy to see. And you can see on the graphic that there are some questions. We align this with our original, like what were our values and what were we looking for in a program? And we just did a Likert scale. And so you could see that you see the differences in opinion, which you just heard. And our next steps while you're taking a look at this are just, again, sending the survey back to our teachers who are piloting new resources for grammar and vocabulary, and then bringing our core review team to synthesize all of this information and hear all these different voices. Ask follow-up questions about the survey. Why do you think this? What makes you say this?
And we can include, we will include a hard copy of this survey and a follow-up memo to members of the board. And I just, I know we've said a few times, like a one-size-fits-all program. I don't think I can underscore enough regardless of the resources that we have in district, we will never be looking at any of our approach to curriculum and instruction as a one-size-fits-all. We simply cannot do that. In a classroom of, 18 to 24 children, you have 18 to 24 different learners who need different things. And so ultimately, this is about the professional learning. It's about knowing the standards, and it's about knowing best instructional practices to support all of our kids in reaching their fullest potential. So I just want to caution us that, I agree with the comments that more time is needed, more time is needed for professional learning. And that's another thing that we're talking about with regard to budget initiative, the professional learning to support our staff to be able to independently plan for their learners and to apply best practices and to work collaboratively to do so. Because you can see that there's a great deal of expertise, and the best professional learning is really, I believe, one another, having time in district to talk about experiences in teaching and learning, and how things are moving forward across the district at the grade levels.
Sorry, I wasn't able to scroll this while you were talking.
Thank you. I think this is a really, really helpful and enlightening conversation. So I very much appreciate all of you taking your Monday mornings away from your classrooms to spend time with us. So I hope that maybe you'll come back, your colleagues will come back and share some more information, because I do think it's great. It's really, really helpful to have the boots on the ground information. So thank you again for taking part today.
Thank you. Unfortunately, can I just leave one comment to Katie's question also? Sarah, if I may, just one comment to Katie's, and teachers will come back next time. I know Linda Brugada mentioned it also. There's an extraordinary amount of resources in terms of looking at differentiating different learners. Also, one of our teachers also spoke about the idea of that you can look back and look forward. That takes into account learning differences from both the exceptional child as well as a child who might need a different level of instruction and individualized. So I look forward to teachers being able to tell you some of the resources in the program that they're able to explore as well.
Thank you, Shirley.
Thank you, Katie.
Okay, if there are no other questions, I think we can wrap this conversation up and move on to our second agenda item. So thank you again for everybody for being here this morning. And we'll move on to the Darien High School new course proposals and shift gears.
Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, colleagues. Have a wonderful day with our kids. Okay, it'll just take me 1 second. Switch gears. And pull the next presentation. Right. Okay. I think you can all see the proper screen for new course proposals. Excellent. Okay, we're excited to share with the board today 3 new course proposals. I'm sure Mrs. Dunn can speak a little bit more about the process for new courses to come forward at Darien High School. There are 3 course proposals today, one in the area of career and technology education with cybersecurity. Mr. Darren will share those details. We'll have Mr. Webster share details around the continued expansion of the American Sign Language course, the trajectory of ASL 3. And then we have an additional course that Mr. Dockham will discuss with us, that is astronomy. These courses are all largely driven by student interest. As Mrs. Dunn said, students vote with their feet. So these courses are courses that we believe would capture the attention of our students and would be really well received by them. I think at this point, Mrs. Dunn, are you on with us?
I am.
Okay, excellent. I'll turn it over to you.
So I think you all know, we have a very robust process here at the high school, working with our curriculum council, which is made up of teacher leaders from each department. They work very closely with the department leaders to identify needs within the disciplines and respond to interests and changes in student interest and needs as well. So we have 3 courses that have come through that process, and we're actually within the process last year. And they are astronomy, cybersecurity, and then a continuation of a program the board has approved already, which is our American Sign Language program. So I will open, I think the first slide on here, Amy, is the astronomy course, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so I'll turn it over to Christian to give you some background on this exciting semester course.
Good morning, everyone. Just a heads up, the bell here is about to ring, so it also will, right on cue, include music and some announcements. So I'll try to get this done as quickly and as efficiently as possible. This astronomy course was brought to the department a number of years ago, and it is really focused on student interest. As Ellen said, we had an internal survey of students, and this garnered well over, for our sophomores and freshmen, well over 50% of our students said they would be interested in taking an astronomy course if it were available for us. Similar to our 11th and 12th grade electives, this is a half credit course, so it would be a semester long, and it would be offered at the 300 level to ensure that all of our students had the ability to make that choice and had access to the course itself. As noted, it is a STEM graduation elective, so it would be an additional opportunity for our students to take a STEM elective course, and it would also meet an elective graduation credit. It's really a focus on our universe and the Earth's place within the universe. So starting at the Big Bang and throughout the semester coming in towards our own galaxy and our own solar system, and really looking at both the physics behind our movements and the earth science behind and astronomy behind the formation of our universe, our galaxy, and our solar system. As an aside here, one of this major benefits of our astronomy course, it will provide more opportunity for some of our 11th and 12th graders to focus on physical science and earth and space science standards. We have 4 semester-long electives, and they're all couched in the life sciences primarily. So this would be an opportunity for our students to take a half semester or semester elective that focuses on physical science and earth and space science standards. And on the right-hand side of the slide is our projected budget implications for next year. And I think most importantly that this would require no staffing increase. We have the expertise in-house with a number of earth science certified teachers who would be interested in teaching this class. So I'm happy to answer any additional questions if there should be any.
Thanks, Christian. I have a quick question about materials, and Ms. Nelson had the same question. You notice it says binoculars and telescopes, but those are not in the supplies. Do we have those already? And is there going to be any additional need for any supplies outside of what?
In looking at what we have in-house, we have some basic telescopes and binoculars. I think as we hope to grow the program, we'd want to look at being able to purchase some additional material as the program develops. But initially, I think we have the materials that in-house right now that we would be able to use to get the program off the ground.
Okay, and this may be a dumb question, even though I know there are no dumb questions, but can you use a telescope during the day with success?
With the filters, which we also do have. So we have solar filters that would fit onto the telescope that would allow us to utilize that during the day. I think ultimately in the future, we envision some after school or evening observation opportunities as well. again, that would see how the program jumps off the ground and make sure that we are providing those opportunities as we get a sense as to what it looks like in the classroom.
And do you anticipate any field trips into the Natural History Museum or anywhere where there's a planetarium to enhance?
So, having spent 10 years at New Canaan High School, they have a planetarium. So we've had some discussion in terms of just possibilities of using that facility, sort of informal at this point, but that's the closest facility. And having experience in using the projector there myself, it would be an opportunity that for collaboration between the two programs for sure.
Great. Thank you. Greg or Katie, anything else?
No, I'm good. Sounds exciting. Thank you.
All good. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Christian.
Thank you.
Sounds like a terrific Great Island project.
Noted.
I'll take the American Sign Language quickly because Mr. Webster's not in today. But as you know, we have currently ASL 1 and ASL 2 running at the high school. It has been very successful, enjoyed by our students at every grade level. So some students taking parts of the sequence as a secondary language, some students taking an ASL 1 just as an experience, as an elective. There are now some students who are interested in really choosing ASL as a language. And so we are proposing ASL 3 and will be proposing ASL 4 for the following year so that we have a 4-year sequence for those students who choose to use ASL as their world language of study. I think it's been a wonderful opportunity for all grade levels to be in the same classroom, learning from one another, working with one another, and it's a very inclusive environment and exciting for the World Language Department. So we would ask for you to allow us to continue that program.
Thanks, Ellen. This makes a lot of sense to me. So are those kids that are can continue on. Any other questions from the board? No? All right, moving on.
All right, so cybersecurity, a very popular new course that's coming up in a lot of areas. And I think Greg is here.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to propose this cybersecurity course. The timing is impeccable as we just wrapped up Cybersecurity Month in October. And you might have seen a number of emails from Jeff Adams just kind of bringing us some awareness about some cybersecurity threats that may happen to us in the district. So I'm going to sort of start in the bottom here, just thinking about how this course came to be. So looking at our computer science pathways, we have some courses in there that we're looking at that could be updated or are outdated, and our computer animation course is one of those courses that it's a great course, but it doesn't quite tie in as well with our computer science pathways and the coding courses that we have as much as this cybersecurity course would. And enrollment in that course has been a little bit low in the past few years. So we started looking at our programming and decided that with kind of the way the market is and how important cybersecurity is in our environment, we decided to propose this cybersecurity course. We had a survey to students, and of the students that we surveyed, about 60 kids say that they were interested in taking this course if it were offered. And we're also looking at preparing students for other educational opportunities to follow if they choose to pursue a career in computer science or even just related fields. Any type of computer science field is going to have some type of cybersecurity component. So this course will help benefit kids who kind of follow in that pathway. It is a STEM graduation requirement. It's a half-year course currently, the way that we're planning to write it. It'll be elective for 10th, 11th, and grade students. And really, we're just kind of trying to really get students to understand some of the backgrounds and the principles with cybersecurity and how to understand how our personal information is used and design certain ways to protect against it. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thanks, Greg. I was just looking at the prereqs and it says Algebra 1. What's the connection between the algebra and this?
So the way students would write code and how they would kind of decipher that is very related to algebra. So if it's the way they would write equations in algebra would help them write coding, the logics behind it.
Thank you. Any other questions, Katie or Greg? No? Okay.
Katie,
Thank you,
I think
guys.
that her hand up.
Sorry, I do. Sorry, I lost my Zoom. Just a couple quick questions. I was curious about the computer usage for this class. Were there designated computers in the school that had been used for computer animation or that would be used? How does this fit in with the BOE OD model?
So we have a couple of computer labs that we use for all of our computer science classes. Most of them are PC-based labs. So we have availability with our labs, especially if we're not going to run computer science, to have these students meet in the current computer labs that we have.
Okay, great. And then also just thank you for touching on, how the pathway and the computer animation classes, although that sounds really exciting. And I was just curious if there might be some opportunities or overlap in some of the art classes and the kind of, creative component of that. I think it was last year we had a presentation on some new devices and some really exciting things. So is there kind of a space for that in some of those other courses?
So there is definitely some overlap, I would say, with maybe like some of the digital photo classes or some of the digital graphic design classes that maybe we could collaborate a little bit and do something so we don't completely lose that component. That is definitely something that I would look into.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next steps for these is that on Tuesday's meeting on the 12th, we will be talking with this on the full board, and I think it is my understanding based on our questioning is that the four of us, and Robin, I asked for specific questions, so I know that she's on board with this, but we would recommend to the full board that these be approved for next year. Is that correct? Correct me if I'm wrong, Greg or Katie. Okay, thanks very much.
Wonderful, thank you.
Sarah.
Yeah.
Jill, I just have a quick question.
Oh, sorry.
For when this gets to the board, I understand cybersecurity is directly replacing another course, but in the case of American Sign Language or the first course, astronomy, it would be helpful to understand how this impacts the overall course catalog. So, again, in this third case, I know we're explicitly trading one course for another, but the more children that move to ASL, does that have any impact on our Spanish or French or other foreign language programs? And similarly, is there anything we're looking at in terms of if we have folks moved over to astronomy, what's the impact on the rest of the course catalog? So if you guys could just present that when you come and bring this in front of the whole board, please.
Thanks, Jill. That's an important consideration. Thanks for bringing that up. Okay. Moving on. Thank you very much. Amy, do you have anything else on this? I think we're.
No, everything has been stated, and we will follow up with that question.
Great, thanks. Okay, so our third agenda item is public comment.
Good morning. If anybody would like to participate in public comment, please use the raised hand icon and wait to be recognized. Please state your name and address for the record, and note you will have up to 3 minutes to comment. I'm checking now. We have no raised hands at this time.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion to adjourn? Katie, second invite. All right, we are all. Thank you very much for your time. Have a good night.
Thank you.